Recording in progress.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Bruchim Abayim. This will probably be our last year on the Sefer itself of Tzipisa Yeshua. And Be'ezus Hashem, we're looking to publish a translation and a commentary on the Sefer Tzipisa Yeshua. If anybody would like to be mishtatef, please let us know. And we're continuing the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim just brought out very powerfully that the learning of Kodshim is considered halacha l'maisa b'zman hazeh. That it's actually considered one of the topics that are noigea b'zman hazeh, because the Chafetz Chaim brought the Gemara B'Metzia Kuf Yadaled that Rabbi Bar Avu met Eliyahu, and Eliyahu asked, "No, Rabbi, why aren't you learning Taros?" And he said, "I have a hard time with the four." And Rashi said, the four that are noigea, Moyed, Nashim, Nezikin are noyeg, and Kodshim also. Talmid Chacham har oisek in Hilchos Avoda is considered like their makar of a karbanos. So that means the Chafetz Chaim says from here we see the learning of Kodshim is considered noigea l'maisa. The Rambam in his Parsha Mishnas the end of Menachos also says that Talmid Chachamim that learn Hilchos Karbanos, it's like the Beis Hamikdash was built in their days. And if I were a Rosh Hashiva in Brisk, I would milk this teaching of the Chafetz Chaim. Now, I don't think that's what the Chafetz Chaim is referring to, because I think in many yeshivas they learn Kodshim for the lamdas of it, and the Chafetz Chaim is referring to learning it halacha l'maisa. But it's an amazing thought that in the world of the Chafetz Chaim, learning Kodshim is not any less than learning Orach Chaim. And that's what the Chafetz Chaim is addressing. He says, I know what people are thinking. Isn't it more important to learn Hilchos Brachas, Hilchos Shabbos, and so forth? And to that, the Chafetz Chaim says, no, it's not necessarily more important. It's not necessarily more important. Namely, because it's considered like you're actively, it's considered halacha l'maisa. So this will probably be our last session on this sefer. V'da oid. Says the Chafetz Chaim another point. The limud hazeh moyel adam. This learning will help a person shlo yimatzu mekatrigin olav momala, so that it will not be found any accusations against the person above. Kedisa Bazar HaKadosh v'Medrash Hanelam l'Parshas Vayera, like we find in the Zayar, in the Medrash Hanelam on Vayera, Amar Rab Kruspadoi, Haiman demadkir inyana de karbanaya, anyone who mentions the subject of karbanos, v'sik ruvta befume, and not only that, V'sikruvta befume, and the karbanos are in his mouth. What does that mean? Targum. Ha'adam shemazkir inyinei karbanos v'hakraba befiv. A person who mentions the subject of karbanos and offering them with his mouth. B'batei knesios v'batei midrashos, and shuls and batei midrashim. Dainu kol karban v'karban lama huba. That is, for each karban, why it's coming. Umasei ha'avoida v'hakrava mamish b'chol karban. And the act of its service and bringing it actually in each karban, v'kivan ba, and he has intent. What does that mean? Rotzloimer, that means to say sheteheza b'makam esa kahakrava, that his learning of it should be in place of the engaging in bringing it. L'chaper al yidei zeh oisay hachet shaba alav oisay hakarban, to mechaper through it for that sin that the karban comes for. Bris krusahi, there's a sealed covenant. The inun malache de midkarin chayve la'avashale, that those angels whose job it is to mention his sin to his chayv, to his detriment, they will only be able to do good to him. What does that mean? Bris krusahi, it's a irrevocable covenant, that those angels that mention his sin to harm him, Einam yichaylam lasus loy raktov. Will only be able to do good to him ad kan l'shaynai. This is the language of the Azayah Kadosh. V'ayin sham oid. Look, see there further. She'Eliyahu Hanavi gila zeh hasoid l'Reb Pinchas. That Eliyahu Hanavi revealed this secret to Rabbi Pinchas Ayin Sham. V'nei mizeh hamaymer levad. From this statement, can you imagine that? Any angel that would dare prosecute against a person, if a person learns the karbanos, it silences the malachim. V'hinei mizeh hamaymer levad. From this teaching alone, nuchal lahavin, we can understand goydel hazrizus lalimadahu. How important it is. We could understand how energetic we should be for this learning. Because everybody knows their own imperfections. We all know our own imperfections. Everybody knows their personal sins. On the outside, we could look like a big tzaddik, but we know on the inside all of our imperfections. And we know that in Shamayim they know our imperfections. And we know they have the scoop on us up there. And they could be prosecuting against us. Everyone knows Sheyesh Avan is how we have many sins. And therefore we have, because of that, many accusatory angels. Rachman al-San, heaven forbid. Heaven should save us. From every sin, it creates a prosecutor. Like we find in the 4th parak of Avos. So how are we going to silence these prosecuting angels? But if we had a technique or a trick, lahashket rucham, to silence their spirits, that they would not be able to prosecute against us, and just the opposite, they will mention us for good before Hashem. How obligated we are to study and be attentive and to try to take advantage of that advice, not to be lazy in it. In other words, this is something everyone has to think about. We all know we have sin. We all know they have the scoop on us. We all know they could be prosecuting against us. But there's a way out. There's a defense. So we should take advantage of it. Namely, we should do everything we can to learn the subject of karbanos. Aside from all of this, when the Beis Hamikdash stood, let's say the Beis Hamikdash stood and the Nasi of Klal Yisrael wanted to bring a carbon himself. He had no permission to do this. And that's Uzziah was punished with leprosy because of this. Only Kohanim are given rishus. But nowadays, every Jew has rishus to learn the subject of karbanos, and Hashem will consider it as if he brought it. Vilu bizmanenu, in our times, kol echad miYisrael, every single Jew, yesh le rishus, has permission, lilmoid inyanei karbanos, to learn the subject of karbanos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu choishev alav, God will consider it ki ilu hikrivan, as if he brought it. V'oid yesh kama ma'amari Chazal, there are also many teachings of Chazal, hamafligim ha'oid, that speak at great length be'inyan kedusha salim arahi, about the sanctity of this subject. Uma'ad mehem hetakti b'sifri Torah ar ayin sham. Some of them I printed in my Sefer Torah ar. Look over there. So this is the conclusion of the Sefer Tzipisa Yeshua, where the Chavetz Chaim's closing arguments are: first of all, whenever we do a sin, it creates a prosecutor. And the Zohar teaches us, by learning the subject of karbanos, it silences the prosecutors above. And we should think about the fact that even if the Beis Hamikdash was standing, even the Nasi would not just be able to bring a carbon whenever he wanted. Certainly, we should say to ourselves, but think about our opportunity that we can today, by learning about karbanos, bring karbanos whenever we so desire. Maybe next week we'll see some of what the Chavetz Chaim writes in the Sefer Torah are. Stay tuned. This concludes Sefer Tzipisa Yeshua, Divrei Hatzoyer Sheba Kahuna. These are the words of the youngest, the smallest of all the Kaihanim, Hamakavli Shuas Hashem, who awaits the salvation of Hashem, Yisrael Meir, ben Rav Ari Yezav HaKohen Miradin, Baal Machaber Sefer Chavetz Chaim Mishnah Berurah, the author of the Chavetz Chaim, the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, so stay tuned for scheduling for next week. Tonight, we have an all-time fantastic shiur about the Makos and the 10 Sfiros. You don't want to miss tonight's shiur at 8:30, so be there. I hope to see everybody, and want everyone to mark on their calendar. Please join us March 3rd to March 5th for our first ever Machon Magen Rakia convention in Miami. Also join us February 17th to the 22nd. We're following in the footsteps of the Chida. We're going to be visiting many Mekayimos where the Chida lived and thrived, and the Kvarim of many Tzadikim and Mekubalim. Have a good day, everyone. Bracha v'atzlacha.